The vampire's cold fingers brushed against her wrist in the darkened alley, and Delilah Kerrigan didn't flinch, couldn't see the deadly smile that would have sent anyone else running, only felt the strange gentleness in his touch that made her breath catch for reasons she didn't yet understand. She'd been searching for her dropped cane when he found her, or perhaps he had been watching long before that moment. The autumn wind carried the scent of rain and something else, something ancient and metallic that she couldn't quite place. Her guide dog, Murphy, had whined softly beside her, torn between loyalty and instinct. "You shouldn't be out here alone," the stranger said, his voice like silk over steel, an accent she couldn't identify, threading through each word. "These streets aren't safe after dark." Delilah turned toward the sound, her clouded eyes seeing nothing but the shapes of shadows she'd grown accustomed to since the accident 3 years ago. "I can take care of myself. I just need to find my cane." A soft sound, almost like amusement, and then something smooth and familiar pressed into her palm, her cane. She hadn't heard him move to retrieve it. "Thank you," she said carefully, sensing something different about this man, something that made Murphy press closer to her legs. "I should get home. Allow me to escort you." It wasn't quite a question, and before she could protest, his hand was at her elbow, steady and cool even through the fabric of her jacket. "My name is Xerxes Blackthorn." The name suited him somehow, though she couldn't explain why. Foreign, old-fashioned, commanding. She should have refused, should have called for a cab, but something in his tone made her feel safer than she had in months, even as a small voice in the back of her mind whispered warnings her body chose to ignore. "Delilah," she offered after a moment, "and you really don't have to—" "I insist." His grip remained gentle but firm. "Where do you live?" She found herself telling him, found herself walking beside this stranger through the streets of Chicago as the evening deepened into true night. He moved with a grace that seemed almost impossible, guiding her around obstacles before she could stumble, his presence a solid anchor in her world of darkness. "You're not afraid," he observed after several blocks. Not a question, but a statement tinged with curiosity. Should I be?" A pause, heavy with meaning. "Most people are, when they encounter something they don't understand." "I stopped being afraid of the dark a long time ago," Delilah said quietly. "When you can't see, every moment is dark. You learn to trust other things, the sound of someone's voice, the way they move, whether their actions match their words. And what do your other senses tell you about me?" She considered this, aware of how strange this conversation was, how intimate it felt despite having just met this man. "That you're dangerous, that you're also kind, at least to me, that you're very, very old, though I don't know how I know that." Xerxes stopped walking, and she felt his attention focus on her with an intensity that made her skin prickle. "You're perceptive." "I have to be." They stood there on the sidewalk, and Delilah could feel the weight of something unspoken hanging between them. Murphy whined again, a soft, uncertain sound. "Your dog doesn't trust me," Xerxes said. "Murphy doesn't trust anyone who isn't me. Don't take it personally." She reached down to stroke the dog's head, soothing him. "We're almost there. Just 2 more blocks." The rest of the walk passed in a silence that felt charged with possibility, with questions Delilah didn't know how to ask. When they reached her apartment building, she expected him to leave, to disappear back into the night as mysteriously as he'd appeared. Instead, he waited while she unlocked the door. "Thank you for walking me home," she said, turning back toward where she thought he stood. "May I see you again?" The question came soft but direct, and there was something vulnerable beneath the aristocratic confidence in his tone. Delilah knew she should say no. Every rational part of her brain screamed that this was foolish, that she knew nothing about this man except that he moved like a predator and spoke like someone from another century. But rationality had never been her strong suit, and there was something about Xerxes Blackthorn that called to her in a way she couldn't explain. "Tomorrow," she heard herself say. "There's a coffee shop 2 blocks from here, The Grind. I'm usually there around sunset." "Sunset," he repeated, and she could hear the smile in his voice. How appropriate. "Until tomorrow, Delilah Kerrigan." She felt him leave more than heard it, a sudden absence of presence that left the air feeling empty. Murphy finally relaxed beside her, and she made her way upstairs to her apartment, wondering what she'd just agreed to. The next evening, Delilah arrived at the grind just as the last rays of sunlight were fading from the sky. She ordered her usual coffee by feel and familiarity, finding her favorite table in the corner where the sounds of the espresso machine and quiet conversations created a comfortable white noise. She didn't have to wait long. The door chimed, and she felt him enter, felt every eye in the coffee shop turn toward the entrance. The conversations faltered for a moment, then resumed with a nervous edge that hadn't been there before. "You came," she said as he slid into the seat across from her. "Did you doubt I would?" "A little." She wrapped her hands around her coffee cup, grateful for the warmth. "Last night felt like something out of a dream. I assure you, I'm quite real." There was amusement in his tone, but also something darker, more serious. "Though, perhaps not in the way you imagine." A waitress approached their table, her footsteps hesitant. "Can I get you anything, sir?" "No, thank you. I don't drink coffee." The way he paused before the last word made Delilah tilt her head slightly, curious. The waitress left quickly, and Delilah could hear her whispering to someone behind the counter. "You're making quite an impression," Delilah said dryly. "I tend to have that effect." He shifted in his seat, and she heard the soft rustle of expensive fabric. "Tell me about yourself, Delilah Kerrigan. What does a beautiful woman do in Chicago besides wander dangerous alleys at night?" The compliment caught her off guard, warming her more than the coffee. "I'm a piano teacher. I work from home mostly, teaching students who come to my apartment. Music is something I can still do, still understand completely, even without my sight." "You weren't always blind." It wasn't a question, but she answered anyway. "Car accident 3 years ago. Drunk driver ran a red light. I was lucky to survive, they told me. The blindness seemed like a small price to pay for my life." She said it matter-of-factly, having told the story so many times it had lost its emotional weight. "What about you? What does Xerxes Blackthorn do in Chicago?" "I manage certain business interests. My family has holdings throughout the city, investments that require oversight." "Your family?" She leaned forward slightly, intrigued by the careful way he chose his words. "Are they here too?" "In a manner of speaking. Chicago has a significant population of my kind." He paused, and she felt the weight of a decision being made. "Delilah, there's something you should know about me, something important." Before he could continue, the door to the coffee shop burst open with enough force to rattle the windows. Murphy, lying at Delilah's feet, jumped up with a sharp bark. The temperature in the room seemed to drop 10 degrees, and the conversations died completely. "Xerxes Blackthorn!" A new voice, female, dripping with contempt and barely restrained fury. "The Vampire King graces us with his presence in this pathetic human establishment. How wonderfully democratic of you." Delilah's breath caught. Vampire King. The words should have sounded absurd, like something out of a bad movie, but they rang with a truth that resonated in her bones. Everything clicked into place with sudden, terrible clarity. His cold skin, his grace, the way he moved, the fact that he'd appeared after dark and suggested meeting at sunset. "Ravenna!" Xerxes' voice had gone cold, dangerous. "This is neither the time nor the place. On the contrary, I think this is the perfect place." Footsteps approached their table, sharp heels clicking against the floor. The great Vampire King, consorting with a blind human. How touching, how absolutely pathetic. Delilah felt Xerxes move, placing himself between her and the woman called Ravenna. "Choose your next words very carefully." "Or what? You'll punish me. You barely have the authority anymore, Xerxes. The council grows restless. They question your leadership, your judgment, especially when you waste time with fragile human toys." Ravenna's voice moved closer. "This one won't even survive the turning, assuming you're fool enough to try. She's damaged goods." The sound of Xerxes moving was like wind rushing through the room. There was a crash, a gasp from the other patrons, and then his voice, soft and deadly. "If you ever speak of her that way again, council member or not, I will personally ensure you understand exactly why I'm king. Are we clear?" Silence, thick and terrible. Then Ravenna laughed, a brittle sound. Crystal clear, my lord. But you can't protect her from everyone. The court will see her as weakness, as distraction. They'll come for her, and your precious human laws won't save her from our kind. More footsteps, retreating, and then the door slammed shut. The coffee shop erupted in nervous chatter, humans trying to rationalize what they'd just witnessed as some kind of theatrical performance or elaborate joke. Xerxes returned to the table, his breathing steady but his presence radiating barely controlled fury. We need to leave. Now. Delilah's hands were shaking as she reached for her cane. Vampire King? I wanted to tell you myself, not like this. His hand found hers, still cold, still gentle despite the violence she'd just heard in his voice. Please, Delilah, let me explain everything, but not here. My home is safe, protected, I can keep you safe. Safe from what? Other vampires? She stood, her mind reeling. This is insane. Vampires aren't real. They can't be real. You already know the truth. You've known since last night, perhaps even before you were willing to admit it to yourself. He was right, and they both knew it. I won't let anyone hurt you, Delilah. I swear it on my very long life. But we need to go. Ravenna's visit wasn't random. She wanted you to know what I am, wanted to frighten you away, which means others are watching, and I need to get you somewhere they can't reach you. Every survival instinct told her to run, to call the police, to do anything except trust a man who claimed to be a vampire king. But those same instincts had also told her last night that she was safe with him, and they hadn't been wrong yet. Okay, she whispered. Take me somewhere safe. The drive to Xerxes' home was silent except for Murphy's nervous panting from the back seat. Delilah sat rigid in the passenger seat of what felt like an absurdly luxurious car, her mind spinning with impossible truths. The leather was soft beneath her fingers, the engine a quiet purr that spoke of wealth beyond her comprehension. How old are you? She asked finally. 3,416 years. The number was so absurd she almost laughed. And you're their king? I am the king of the North American territories, which includes everything from the Arctic Circle to the Mexican border. There are other kings and queens across the world, an ancient hierarchy that predates human civilization, as you know it. He took a turn smoothly, his control absolute. I wasn't always king. That's a title I earned through centuries of politics, warfare, and outlasting my rivals. And Ravenna? A council member, old and bitter and dangerous. She believes I've grown soft, that my attempts to modernize our laws and find peaceful coexistence with humanity are weakness. His voice hardened. She's wrong, but she's not alone in her thinking. There are factions within vampire society that want to return to the old ways, when we took what we wanted, and humans were nothing more than prey. Delilah absorbed this, trying to reconcile the gentleman who'd walked her home with the ancient predator he claimed to be. Why me? Why did you approach me last night? A long pause. Because I've been watching you for weeks and I couldn't stay away any longer. The confession hung in the air between them, raw and honest. Before Delilah could respond, the car slowed, then stopped. She heard a gate opening, metal sliding against metal, and then they were moving again, onto what sounded like a gravel drive. We're here, Xerxes said quietly. Welcome to Thornmoor. He helped her from the car with careful courtesy, Murphy close at her side. The air smelled different here, cleaner somehow, with hints of old stone and autumn gardens. When he opened the door to the house, their footsteps echoed in what must have been an enormous entrance hall. How big is this place? Delilah asked, overwhelmed by the sense of space around her. 17 bedrooms, 23 bathrooms, ballroom, library, and various other rooms accumulated over the century I've owned this particular property. He guided her forward, Murphy's nails clicking on marble floors. It was built to resemble a European manor house, though with certain modern conveniences, and modifications for my kind. Like what? Reinforced windows that can withstand sunlight, underground chambers for true shelter, security systems that can detect both human and vampire intrusions. They turned down what felt like a hallway, the space narrowing slightly. Here, this is the sitting room. She felt soft cushions behind her legs and sat carefully on what proved to be a deeply comfortable sofa. Xerxes settled nearby, close enough that she could feel the cool air that seemed to emanate from him. "I have so many questions," Delilah said, her voice small in the vast house. "Ask them. I'll answer everything truthfully. You deserve that much." She gathered her thoughts, trying to organize the chaos in her mind. "The sunlight thing. Is that real?" "Very real. Direct sunlight will burn us to ash within minutes. We can tolerate heavily clouded days for short periods, but it's agonizing and dangerous. Most of us sleep during daylight hours, both from necessity and survival instinct. And blood. We need it to survive. Human blood is ideal, but we can sustain ourselves on animal blood if necessary. The laws I've established prohibit killing humans for food. We have willing donors, blood banks we control, ways of feeding that don't require death or trauma." He shifted slightly. "I haven't killed a human for food in over 1,000 years, Delilah. That's not who I am anymore." "Anymore," she echoed. "But you did once." "Yes." No hesitation, no attempt to soften the truth. "I was young and ruthless, and believed humans were nothing more than food. It took centuries for me to understand differently, to see the value in human life beyond sustenance. My views are not popular among all my kind, which is why people like Ravenna oppose me." Delilah pulled her knees up to her chest, processing. "And the turning she mentioned? Making humans into vampires?" "It's possible, but dangerous. The process involves draining a human to the point of death, then feeding them vampire blood. Many don't survive. Those who do are forever changed, neither fully human nor fully what we are. They're stronger than humans, immortal like us, but the transformation is painful, and not everyone retains their humanity afterward." His voice softened. "I would never turn someone without their full consent and understanding of what they'd be giving up." "Why have you been watching me?" The question came out barely above a whisper. She heard him move, felt him shift closer until he was kneeling before her, his hands resting carefully on either side of her on the sofa, not touching, but present. "Because 3 months ago I was driving through your neighborhood and I heard you playing piano through your open window, Chopin's Nocturne in E-flat major. It was the most beautiful thing I'd heard in centuries, played with such emotion, such perfect understanding of the piece. I stopped my car and listened until you finished." Delilah's breath caught. "I came back the next night, and the night after that, just to hear you play. Then one evening, you came out to walk your dog, and I saw your face for the first time. You moved through the world with such grace, such fearlessness despite your blindness. You smiled at strangers who passed by, trusting in the fundamental goodness of people even though you couldn't see them." His voice dropped lower, more intimate. "I've lived for thousands of years, Delilah, and I've never met anyone like you. You terrified me because I realized I wanted to know you, to be near you, to hear you laugh. I wanted things I'd convinced myself I was too old and too different to want anymore." "That's why you were in the alley," she realized. "You were following me." "Protecting you," he corrected gently. "That neighborhood has become more dangerous recently. Drug dealers, human traffickers, and worse. I couldn't stand by and let something happen to you, but I didn't trust myself to approach you directly. Then you dropped your cane, and I couldn't stop myself anymore." Delilah reached out slowly, her fingers finding his face. He went very still under her touch, letting her explore the sharp planes of his cheekbones, the straight line of his nose, the soft curve of his lips. His skin was cool, smooth, perfect in a way that didn't feel quite human. When her fingers brushed his mouth, she felt the sharp points of fangs against his upper lip. "You really are a vampire," she breathed. "I really am." She should be terrified. Every rational thought said to run, to call for help, to do anything except sit here touching the face of a monster. But she didn't feel afraid. She felt curious, excited, alive in a way she hadn't since before the accident. "What happens now?" she asked, pulling her hand back reluctantly. That depends entirely on what you want. I can have you taken home and you'll never see me again. I'll ensure you're protected from a distance, but I won't intrude on your life." He paused. "Or you can stay, learn more about my world, about me. Let this connection between us develop into whatever it's meant to become. And if I stay, I'll be in danger, from Ravenna and others like her. I won't lie to you. Yes, there will be danger. You represent something my kind can't understand, a weakness they'll want to exploit. But I am still king, and I have allies, power, resources. I can protect you, Delilah. The question is whether you trust me enough to let me. She thought about the gentleness in his hands when he'd returned her cane, the fury in his voice when Ravenna had insulted her, the vulnerability in his confession about watching her play piano. She thought about how safe she'd felt walking beside him, how right it had seemed despite all logic. I want to stay, she said firmly, at least for tonight. I want to understand this, understand you. She felt his relief like a physical thing, a tension releasing from the air around them. Thank you. Don't thank me yet. I'm probably insane for not running away screaming. Probably, he agreed, and she could hear the smile in his voice. But I've always appreciated a certain kind of madness. Are you hungry? I have a full kitchen and a cook who can prepare anything you'd like. You have human food? I host human business associates regularly. It's important to maintain certain appearances. He stood, offering her his hand. Come. I'll show you the house while dinner is prepared. The tour of Thornmoor was overwhelming in its grandeur. Xerxes described each room they entered in vivid detail, painting pictures with his words that helped Delilah construct a mental map of the sprawling mansion. The library with floor-to-ceiling shelves holding books in dozens of languages, some of them older than countries. The ballroom with crystal chandeliers and marble floors that still hosted vampire court gatherings. The music room with a grand piano that Xerxes insisted she try. And when she played a few experimental notes, the acoustics were so perfect she nearly cried. This is too much, she said, her fingers resting on the keys. All of this, it's like something out of a fairy tale. A rather dark fairy tale, Xerxes observed, leaning against the piano. But yes, I suppose it is. We vampires tend toward the dramatic. Centuries of life teach you to appreciate beauty, to surround yourself with things that make eternity bearable. Is it hard, living forever? Sometimes. You watch everyone you care about age and die. You see civilizations rise and fall. You outlive your enemies and your friends alike, until the weight of memory becomes almost unbearable. His voice carried the weariness of millennia. But then you hear a blind woman play Chopin with such perfect understanding that it makes your dead heart ache, and you remember why immortality can be a gift. Delilah turned toward him, toward the sound of his voice. I'm not that special. You're wrong. He moved closer, and she felt his cool fingers brush her cheek with infinite gentleness. You're the most remarkable person I've met in 3,000 years, Delilah Kerrigan, and I've met quite a few people. Before she could respond, a soft chime echoed through the house. Xerxes stiffened, his hand dropping from her face. What is it? Delilah asked, hearing the sudden tension in his posture. Someone at the gate, a vampire. He pulled out his phone, and she heard him typing quickly. Lucian, one of my council members, but loyal. He wouldn't come without good reason. Should I hide? No, Lucian needs to see that you're under my protection, that I'm serious about keeping you safe. He offered his arm. Come, we'll meet him in my study. Murphy can come too. The study was all leather and old paper, overwhelming Delilah with scents that spoke of age and power. She sat in a chair that felt antique, Murphy pressing against her legs while Xerxes moved to stand behind his desk. The door opened moments later without a knock, and a new presence entered the room. Xerxes. The voice was male, younger sounding than the vampire king, with a British accent. We have a problem. Lucian. This is Delilah Kerrigan. Delilah, Lucian Draven, my second in command and oldest friend. Friend might be overstating it after 300 years of your nonsense, Lucian said, but there was warmth beneath the sarcasm. Miss Kerrigan, a pleasure. I wish we were meeting under better circumstances. What's happened? Xerxes demanded. Ravenna called an emergency council session for tomorrow night. She's claiming you've compromised your position as king by involving yourself with a human, that you're violating the very laws you established about keeping our existence secret. Lucian's footsteps moved across the room. She has support, Xerxes, more than we anticipated. The old guard sees this as their chance to challenge your authority, to push for a return to the traditional ways. Let them challenge. Xerxes' voice was cold steel. I've faced challenges before. Not like this. This isn't just about politics anymore. Ravenna is claiming that Miss Kerrigan poses an existential threat to vampire society, that humans can't be trusted with knowledge of our existence. She's calling for Xerxes. She's calling for Miss Kerrigan's death. The room went silent, except for Delilah's sharp intake of breath. Murphy whined, pressing harder against her legs. Over my dead body, Xerxes said softly, and the words carried more menace than any shout could have. That's what she's counting on, Lucian replied grimly. If you refuse to deal with the human threat, she'll use it as proof that you're unfit to rule. She's gathering allies for a formal vote of no confidence. If she succeeds, the new king or queen will have the authority to do as they please with Miss Kerrigan, and you'll be powerless to stop them. Delilah found her voice, though it shook slightly. Maybe I should just go. Disappear. If I'm causing this much trouble. No. Xerxes was beside her in an instant, his hands on her shoulders, firm and grounding. You're not running. You've done nothing wrong. This is vampire politics, and I won't let you be a casualty of it. But if it costs you your throne, then it costs me my throne. He knelt before her, just as he had earlier, his cool hands finding hers. Delilah, I've been king for 800 years. It's a title, a responsibility, a burden. But you're something I never expected to find in all my centuries, something real and precious and worth protecting, no matter the cost. You barely know me, she whispered. I know enough. I know that you're brave and talented and kind. I know that you make me feel things I thought I'd forgotten how to feel. I know that I'm not letting anyone hurt you, even if it means giving up everything I've built. He squeezed her hands gently. But it won't come to that. We're going to fight this, and we're going to win. Lucian cleared his throat. Touching speech, but we need a strategy. The council meets tomorrow at midnight in the grand chamber beneath the city. Ravenna will present her case, you'll present yours, and the council will vote. We need at least 7 of the 13 votes to maintain your position. Who do we have? Xerxes asked, standing but not releasing Delilah's hand. Myself, obviously. Elena and Marcus will support you. Theodosia is likely with us, though she'll want something in return. Lucian ticked off names on his fingers. That's 4. Ravenna has her own faction, the traditionalists. She, Victor, and Constantia are definitely against you. Silas and Magdalena will follow Victor's lead, so that's 5 against us. And the others? Wild cards. Ambrose doesn't like change but respects strength. Natalia is ambitious and will vote for whoever she thinks will win. Cassius and Evander are old enough that they might not care either way, which means they could be swayed. Lucian paused. We need to win over at least 3 of them, preferably more to show a strong mandate. Delilah listened to them strategize, feeling increasingly like a chess piece in a game she didn't understand. These were ancient beings debating her fate, and despite Xerxes' passionate declaration, she couldn't shake the feeling that she was a liability, a weakness that could destroy everything he'd worked to build. There has to be another option, she said, interrupting their discussion. What if I became like you, a vampire? Would that change things? Both men went still. Then Xerxes said very carefully, No. Why not? If the problem is that I'm human, that I'm a security risk. The problem is that Ravenna is a power-hungry monster who's been waiting for any excuse to challenge me. Xerxes cut her off, his voice sharp. And I will not turn you into something you're not just to appease her politics. The transformation is dangerous, painful, and irreversible. You would lose your humanity, your mortality, everything that makes you who you are. I won't ask that of you, Delilah, not for this. But, no. He moved back to her, his hands framing her face with heartbreaking gentleness. I've lived 3,000 years waiting to meet someone like you. I'm not going to destroy what makes you special just to make vampire politics easier. We'll find another way. What if there isn't another way? Then we'll create one. His thumb brushed her cheekbone, and she leaned into the touch despite herself. Trust me, Delilah, please. She wanted to argue. She wanted to point out the logical flaws in his stubbornness, but the emotion in his voice stopped her. This wasn't just about politics or strategy. This was about him protecting something he valued, even if it meant risking everything. Okay, she said softly. I trust you. Lucian made a sound that might have been approval or concern. We should prepare for the council meeting. Xerxes, you'll need to present Miss Kerrigan as an asset, not a liability. Show them that she understands the need for secrecy, that she can be trusted. She shouldn't have to prove anything to them, Xerxes growled. No, she shouldn't. But this is the reality we're dealing with. Lucian's voice gentled slightly. Miss Kerrigan, would you be willing to attend the council meeting, to speak on your own behalf? The thought terrified her, but Delilah lifted her chin. If it helps, yes. It could be dangerous, Xerxes warned. The Grand Chamber is full of vampires, some of whom would happily see you dead. If things go wrong, I'll already be dead anyway, won't I? Delilah cut him off. At least if I'm there, I can fight for myself. I'm not helpless, Xerxes. I'm blind, not broken. Silence. And then Xerxes laughed, a sound of genuine delight that transformed his entire presence. You're magnificent. Absolutely magnificent. She's also right, Lucian added. Having her there, showing the council that she's intelligent and aware of the risks, could sway some of the undecided votes. Vampires respect strength and courage. Show them both. They spent the next several hours preparing. Lucian explained the council structure, the hierarchy of vampire society, the ancient protocols that governed their kind. Delilah learned that vampires had existed alongside humanity for as long as recorded history, hidden in plain sight, their numbers carefully controlled to avoid detection. They had their own laws, their own justice system, their own complex political structures that spanned the globe. It's like discovering there's an entire civilization I never knew existed, Delilah said, overwhelmed by the information. That's exactly what it is, Lucian confirmed. And you've stumbled into it at a particularly volatile moment. Xerxes' reforms have been unpopular with the old guard. They remember the days when we ruled through fear, when humans were little more than cattle. The fact that our king is now protecting a human, showing vulnerability and attachment, it threatens everything they believe about vampire superiority. So I'm a symbol, Delilah said bitterly. An example of human weakness contaminating vampire strength. Or you're a symbol of a different future, Xerxes countered. One where humans and vampires can coexist, where we don't have to be predators and prey. That's what I've been trying to build, Delilah. A world where both species can thrive without constant fear and bloodshed. You're not a weakness. You're a bridge. A bridge many vampires want to burn, Lucian muttered. By the time Lucian left to begin gathering their supporters, it was nearly dawn. Xerxes led Delilah to a guest room that felt more luxurious than any hotel she'd ever stayed in, with sheets that felt like silk and furniture that had probably cost more than her annual salary. I need to rest, he told her, lingering in the doorway. Daylight is coming, and even with the protections, I'll be weak until sunset. There are guards I trust watching the house, and Murphy will be with you. You're safe here, I promise. Will I see you again, before the council meeting? The moment the sun sets, I'll come find you. He hesitated, then asked, May I? May you what? Kiss you, just once before I have to leave you. Delilah's heart stuttered in her chest. She should say no, should maintain some distance and rationality in this insane situation. Instead, she found herself nodding, her breath catching as she heard him move closer. His lips brushed hers with a gentleness that stole her breath, cool and soft and perfect. The kiss was chaste, restrained, but it carried the weight of 3,000 years of loneliness and the tentative hope of something new. When he pulled back, Delilah felt dizzy. Sleep well, Delilah Kerrigan, he murmured against her lips, and know that I will move heaven and earth to keep you safe. Then he was gone, and Delilah was alone with Murphy and her racing thoughts. She lay in the enormous bed, too wired to sleep despite her exhaustion, replaying everything that had happened in the last 24 hours. Yesterday morning, she'd been a piano teacher with a quiet, predictable life. Now she was in a vampire king's mansion, preparing to face an ancient council that wanted her dead, and falling helplessly in love with an immortal predator. She must be insane. Except she didn't feel insane. She felt more alive than she had in years, more herself than she'd been since the accident. Xerxes saw her as complete, not damaged. He treated her blindness as just another aspect of who she was, not something to be pitied or overcome. And when he looked at her, she could feel the intensity of his attention, could sense that to him, she was the most important thing in the world. It was terrifying. It was wonderful. It was absolutely impossible. And yet, here she was. Delilah finally slept sometime after dawn, her dreams full of cold hands and gentle voices, and the feeling of fangs barely restrained against soft lips. She woke to Murphy's wet nose against her hand and the sound of curtains being drawn. "Good evening, Miss Kerrigan," an unfamiliar female voice said, warm and professional. "My name is Catherine. I'm Mr. Blackthorn's head of household. He asked me to help you prepare for this evening." "What time is it?" Delilah asked groggily. 7 in the evening. The council meets at midnight, and we have much to do before then." Catherine's footsteps moved around the room. "I've drawn you a bath and laid out appropriate clothing. Mr. Blackthorn thought you might also want to eat something before the meeting." Delilah let herself be guided through the preparations, grateful for Catherine's matter-of-fact efficiency. The bath was heavenly, the water perfect, with oils that smelled of lavender and sage. The clothing Catherine had chosen was soft and elegant, some kind of dress that flowed like water and made Delilah feel more beautiful than she had in years. "You look lovely," Catherine said approvingly. "Mr. Blackthorn has excellent taste." "Did he choose this?" Delilah asked, surprised. "He spent 2 hours selecting options before the sun rose. He wanted you to feel confident and comfortable." There was a smile in Catherine's voice. "In all my years working for him, I've never seen him so concerned about anyone's well-being. You must be quite special." Before Delilah could respond, she felt a familiar presence enter the room. Xerxes, moving with that impossible grace, his attention focused on her like a physical touch. "You look breathtaking," he said quietly. "The dress suits you perfectly." "Thank you for choosing it." Delilah turned toward him, suddenly shy. "Are you ready for tonight?" "As ready as I can be. Lucian has been working the council all day through messengers. We have our 4 votes secured, and Theodosia has agreed to support us in exchange for expanded territory in the Midwest. That's 5. We need at least 2 more. And if we don't get them? Then we fight, verbally tonight, physically if necessary. I won't let them take you, Delilah, no matter what happens in that chamber." Catherine cleared her throat. "The car's ready whenever you are, sir, and Cook has prepared food for Miss Kerrigan in the dining room." Dinner was a surreal experience. Delilah ate alone at a table that probably seated 20, with Xerxes sitting beside her, not eating but keeping her company. He described the room to her, the paintings on the walls, the view of the gardens through the windows now that night had fallen. "Tell me about your life," he said suddenly. "Before the accident, what were you like?" Delilah set down her fork, considering. "Reckless, probably. I was studying to be a concert pianist, traveling for competitions and performances. I was always moving, always chasing the next accomplishment. My parents worried I was burning out, that I was pushing too hard." She smiled sadly. They were right. The night of the accident, I was driving home from a performance in Milwaukee. I'd barely slept in 3 days, and I was exhausted. If I'd just pulled over, gotten a hotel room, called someone for a ride. But I thought I could make it. And the drunk driver? Wasn't the only one at fault. I was so tired I didn't see him coming until it was too late. Maybe if I'd been more alert, I could have swerved, avoided him. She shook her head. I spent a long time blaming myself, even more than I blamed him. The blindness felt like punishment for my arrogance. Xerxes' hand found hers across the table, his grip firm. It wasn't punishment. It was tragedy, senseless and unfair, but it doesn't diminish who you are or what you're capable of. You're still that brilliant pianist, still that determined woman. You've just adapted to a new reality. That's what my therapist said, more or less. Delilah laughed softly. It took me 2 years to believe her. Some days I still don't. Then believe me instead. I've lived long enough to recognize true strength, true talent. You have both in abundance. He stood, pulling her gently to her feet. And now we need to leave. It's time to show my council exactly who they're dealing with. The drive to the Grand Chamber took them deep into the heart of Chicago, down into parking structures and service tunnels that Delilah had never known existed. Xerxes explained that the chamber had been built in the late 1800s, hidden beneath what was now a historic building in the Loop, accessible only through vampire-controlled passages. "We're going underground," he warned as they left the car. "It will be cold and dark, though I suppose the latter doesn't matter to you." "Is that a blind joke, Xerxes Blackthorn?" Delilah asked, mock-offended. "Perhaps a small one." She could hear the smile in his voice. "Too soon?" "About 3 years too late, actually. I'm glad you feel comfortable enough to make them." The tunnels were as cold as he'd promised, and the air tasted of stone and age. Murphy stayed close to Delilah's side, his body tense with awareness. They walked for what felt like forever, their footsteps echoing in the darkness, until finally, Xerxes stopped before what he described as enormous bronze doors. "Beyond this point, we're in their territory," he said quietly. "The council chamber is neutral ground where even the king can be challenged. Stay close to me, and if anything happens, Lucian will get you out. Understand?" "Nothing's going to happen," Delilah said with more confidence than she felt. "We're going to go in there, show them I'm not a threat, and walk back out together." "Your optimism is charming. Your pessimism is predictable." He laughed, the sound echoing in the tunnel, and then the doors groaned open. The temperature dropped even further, and Delilah heard voices, multiple conversations happening in low tones. The grand chamber, she realized, full of vampires who wanted her dead. "Xerxes Blackthorn, king of the North American territories," a voice announced, formal and ringing, "and the human, Delilah Kerrigan." The conversation stopped. Delilah felt the weight of dozens of eyes on her, predatory and assessing. Murphy growled softly, and Xerxes' hand tightened on her arm. "The council recognizes you, King Xerxes," the voice continued. "Please take your place so we may begin." They walked forward, Xerxes guiding her carefully across what felt like a stone floor. He described the room to her in quick whispers, circular, with 13 thrones arranged in a semicircle, a raised dais in the center where they now stood, galleries above where lesser vampires watched the proceedings, and everywhere the cold press of immortal attention. "We are gathered tonight to address a challenge to King Xerxes' authority," the formal voice said. Ravenna, Delilah realized. She was leading this prosecution. "The charge is simple, that our king has compromised his position by involving himself with a human, sharing the secrets of our existence, and putting all vampire kind at risk through his sentimentality and weakness." "A bold accusation," Xerxes said coolly. "Do you have any proof of this supposed weakness, Ravenna? Or are you simply upset that I won't indulge your fantasies of slaughtering humans for sport?" A collective intake of breath from the watching vampires. Ravenna's voice went sharp with fury. "You dare mock me before the council? I dare call you out for the power-hungry hypocrite you are. This isn't about protecting vampire society. This is about you wanting my throne." Xerxes' presence seemed to expand, filling the room with ancient authority. "Make your case if you must, but don't pretend this is anything other than a political coup." "Very well." Ravenna's footsteps circled them on the dais. "The human knows of our existence. She's been inside your home, privy to our secrets, our weaknesses. What's to stop her from sharing this information, from exposing us to the world?" "Her word," Xerxes said simply, "and her character." "The word of a human," Ravenna laughed. "Humans lie, Xerxes. They betray, they break promises, they act out of fear and self-interest. You've lived long enough to know this." "I've also lived long enough to know that vampires do all those things too," Xerxes countered. "Species doesn't determine character." "Ravenna, I trust Delilah because she's proven herself worthy of trust, not because of what she is." "Then let her prove it to the council." Another voice, male, cultured. "Let the human speak for herself. Tell us, Miss Kerrigan, why should we trust you with the knowledge of our existence? What guarantee can you give that you won't betray us?" Delilah took a deep breath, gathering her courage. Xerxes had warned her this might happen, and they'd prepared an answer together. But standing here, surrounded by ancient predators who could kill her without effort, all her prepared words fled. "I can't give you a guarantee," she said clearly. "I can't prove my trustworthiness with contracts or magic or anything that would satisfy a vampire's sense of certainty. All I can offer is my word and my understanding of what's at stake." "Your word means nothing," Ravenna spat. "Then nothing I say will satisfy you, will it?" Delilah turned toward where she thought Ravenna stood. This isn't really about me at all. I'm just an excuse, a convenient weapon for you to use against Xerxes. But here's what I know. I know that Xerxes has spent centuries trying to build a better world for vampires and humans alike. I know that he's established laws that protect both species, and I know that people like you hate those laws because they limit your power, your ability to do whatever you want without consequence. You know nothing of our ways, human. I know tyranny when I hear it. Delilah's voice rang out clear and strong. I know that someone who demands absolute authority and wants to rule through fear is exactly the kind of person who shouldn't have power. And I know that Xerxes is a better king than you could ever hope to be, because he understands that true strength comes from protecting the vulnerable, not exploiting them. Silence fell over the chamber. Then someone started laughing, a rich, ancient sound. "Oh, I like her, Xerxes. She has fire." "Thank you, Ambrose," Xerxes said dryly. "The human makes a valid point," the voice called Ambrose continued. "Ravenna, you've been angling for power since before Rome fell. Perhaps it's time to accept that the world has changed and your methods are outdated." "Outdated?" Ravenna's fury was palpable. "We are vampires. We are predators. We should not bow to humans, should not hide in shadows and beg for their blood like grateful pets. We ruled this world once, and we can rule it again." "And doom us all in the process," another voice said, female and sharp. "Elena, if Delilah remembered Lucian's descriptions correctly. The human world has weapons now that could destroy us. Nuclear bombs, biological warfare, surveillance technology that makes hiding nearly impossible. If we reveal ourselves, if we try to rule openly, we'll spark a war we cannot win. Then we make them fear us again. Or we do what Xerxes has been doing and find a way to coexist." This was Lucian's voice, calm and reasonable. "The human has knowledge of our existence, yes, but she also has every reason to keep that knowledge secret. Her life depends on it, and she knows that. More importantly, she's shown courage and intelligence in facing this council. Those are qualities we should respect, not punish." The debate raged around them, vampires arguing for and against, voices rising in anger and passion. Delilah stood beside Xerxes, feeling his solid presence, his unwavering confidence that they would somehow survive this. Finally, a voice cut through the chaos, old and commanding. "Enough, we will vote. All those in favor of removing Xerxes Blackthorn from his position as king of the North American territories, speak now." "I vote for removal," Ravenna said immediately. "As do I," said another voice. Victor, Delilah thought. 3 more voices joined them, 5 votes against Xerxes, just as Lucian had predicted. "All those who stand with King Xerxes speak now." "I stand with the king," Lucian said. "And I," Elena added. 3 more voices quickly followed, Marcus, Theodosia, and the laughing Ambrose. That was 6 votes for Xerxes. "The vote stands at 6 for the king, 5 against," the ancient voice said. 2 council members have not yet spoken. "Natalia, Cassius, the chamber awaits your decision." The silence stretched, unbearable. Delilah reached for Xerxes' hand, finding it and squeezing tight, his fingers interlaced with hers, cold and strong. "I vote for the king," a female voice said finally. "Natalia. Not because I approve of his methods, but because I respect his strength. He has faced this challenge without flinching, has defended his choice without apology. That takes courage. I will stand with courage over cowardice." 7 votes. They had won, but there was still 1 vote outstanding. "Cassius," the ancient voice prompted, "the council requires your vote." A long pause. Then an old, tired voice said, "I abstain. I've lived too long to care about politics anymore. Do as you will." The vote is decided. 7 votes for King Xerxes, 5 against, 1 abstention. Xerxes Blackthorn retains his position as king of the North American territories. The ancient voice carried a note of satisfaction. "Ravenna, your challenge has failed. Do you accept the council's decision?" Another terrible pause. Then Ravenna said, voice dripping with venom, "I accept. For now." "Then this session is concluded. The human may leave under the king's protection, and all vampires present are bound by council law to honor her safety." The sound of something heavy striking stone like a gavel. "We are adjourned." Delilah felt Xerxes release a breath he probably didn't need to take. Come, we're leaving before Ravenna decides to do something foolish. They moved quickly across the chamber, Lucian joining them. The walk back through the tunnels felt faster, charged with adrenaline and relief. They didn't speak until they were in the car, pulling away from the hidden entrance. That was closer than I'd like, Lucian said from the front seat. Natalia's vote could have gone either way. But it didn't. We won. Xerxes had Delilah pulled close against his side, his arm around her shoulders. You were incredible in there. The way you faced them down, called out Ravenna's true motives. I've never seen a human stand before the council with such courage. I was terrified, Delilah admitted. So was I, but you didn't let that stop you. He pressed a kiss to her temple, achingly gentle. Thank you for fighting for us. For us, she repeated softly, liking the sound of it. The drive back to Thornmoor passed in comfortable silence. Delilah leaned against Xerxes, feeling the solid strength of him, the careful way he held her as if she was something precious. When they arrived at the mansion, Lucian excused himself quickly, citing business to attend to, but Delilah suspected he simply wanted to give them privacy. Are you tired? Xerxes asked as they stood in the entrance hall. It's been an exhausting night. I'm too wired to sleep. Delilah turned toward him. Play something for me? On the piano in the music room? I don't play, he said, surprised. Then listen while I play. That's how this started, isn't it? You heard me through my window. He led her back to the music room, settling onto the bench beside her while she found the keys. Delilah thought for a moment about what to play, what could possibly express everything she felt in this moment. Then her fingers began moving, and she played Chopin's Nocturne in E-flat major, the piece that had first drawn Xerxes to her window. She played it differently than she had that night 3 months ago. Then, she'd been playing for herself, pouring her loneliness and grief into the notes. Now she played for him, for them, letting the music speak all the things she wasn't ready to say aloud. The way her heart raced when he touched her. The terror and exhilaration of falling for someone so impossible. The desperate hope that this could somehow work, that they could find a way to be together despite the gulf between their worlds. When the last notes faded, Xerxes was utterly still beside her. Then he said, voice rough with emotion, "That was the most beautiful thing I've ever heard." I was playing for you, Delilah said simply. I know. His hand came up to cup her face, his thumb brushing her lower lip. Delilah, I need to tell you something. Something important. Okay. I've lived for 3,000 years. I've seen civilizations rise and fall. I've loved and lost, ruled and been overthrown, fought in wars and brokered peace treaties. I've experienced nearly everything this world has to offer. He paused, and she felt him lean closer. But I have never, not once in all those centuries, felt the way I feel when I'm with you. You make me want to be better, to fight for a better world, to believe that immortality can be a blessing instead of a curse. Xerxes. I'm falling in love with you, Delilah Kerrigan. Probably already have fallen, if I'm honest. And I know it's too soon. I know you barely know me. I know there are 1,000 reasons why this is complicated and difficult and maybe impossible. But I need you to know the truth. You've changed everything for me. Delilah felt tears prick her eyes. I'm falling in love with you too. Which is insane, because you're right, we barely know each other. And you're a vampire and I'm human. And there are so many things that could go wrong. He kissed her, cutting off her rambling. This kiss was nothing like the gentle brush of lips from earlier. This was deep and passionate and full of 3,000 years of loneliness, finally finding an end. Delilah kissed him back with equal fervor, her hands coming up to tangle in his hair, pulling him closer. When they finally broke apart, both breathing hard, Xerxes rested his forehead against hers. Stay with me, not just tonight, but for as long as you'll have me. Move into Thornmoor, let me protect you and court you and show you everything my world has to offer. I have students, Delilah protested weakly. A job, an apartment, responsibilities. Bring your students here. Teach from the music room with the perfect acoustics. I'll have everything moved from your apartment. Murphy will have a massive yard to run in, and you'll never have to worry about rent or safety or anything except whether you want to have dinner with a vampire king every night. It was too much, too fast, completely insane. Delilah knew she should say no, should insist on going slower, on maintaining some independence and rationality. But when had she ever been rational when it came to things she wanted? She'd chased her dream of being a concert pianist with reckless abandon. She'd driven through the night despite exhaustion. She'd trusted a stranger in a dark alley because something in her recognized him as important. And now, she was being offered a life she'd never imagined with a man who made her feel complete in ways she'd never expected. "Yes," she said. "Yes, I'll stay with you." His joy was palpable, radiating from him like heat. He kissed her again, softer this time, reverent. "I swear to you, Delilah, I will spend every night we have together making sure you never regret this decision." "You'd better," she said, smiling against his lips. "I'm giving up my rent-controlled apartment for you. That's serious commitment." He laughed, the sound pure and happy, and pulled her close. They sat there on the piano bench, wrapped in each other's arms as the night stretched out around them. Outside, the world was complicated and dangerous, full of vampire politics and ancient grudges, and the constant struggle between their two species. But here, in this moment, none of that mattered. Here, there was only a blind woman and the vampire king who loved her, finding the impossible made real. The next few weeks passed in a blur of change and adjustment. Delilah's belongings were moved to Thornmoor, her students informed of her new location. To her surprise, most of them were happy to continue lessons at the mansion, thrilled by the chance to play on the grand piano in the music room. Those who couldn't make the trip were referred to other teachers with Delilah's recommendation and regret. Xerxes was true to his word about courting her. Every evening when the sun set, he found her wherever she was in the mansion and spent hours talking, listening, sharing stories of his incredibly long life. He told her about ancient Rome, about the fall of Constantinople, about the birth of America and the wars he'd fought in. He described art she'd never seen, places she'd never been, moments of history he'd witnessed firsthand. In return, Delilah told him about her life, her dreams, her family. Her parents, both passed now, who had encouraged her music. Her brother, who lived in California and thought she was crazy for moving in with a man she barely knew. Her hopes for the future, the students she wanted to help, the music she still wanted to create. "I never asked," Xerxes said one evening as they walked through the gardens behind Thornmoor, his hand warm from being pressed against her own. "What happened to your dream of being a concert pianist? After the accident, I mean." Delilah was quiet for a moment, listening to the sound of their footsteps on the gravel path. "I gave it up. Told myself that a blind woman couldn't perform at that level, that I'd never be able to navigate the stage or read music or handle the logistics. But the truth is, I was afraid. Afraid of failing, of people seeing me as a disability rather than a musician. It was easier to just stop trying. Do you want to try again? Sometimes I think about it, but the world of concert performance is brutal, Xerxes. It was hard enough when I could see. Now?" She shrugged. "I'm not sure I have the courage to face that kind of scrutiny again." "You faced down a council of ancient vampires who wanted you dead," Xerxes pointed out. "If you can do that, you can face any audience in the world. That's different." "Is it? Or have you convinced yourself that your blindness makes you less than you were, when the truth is you're just different, still brilliant, still talented, just operating in a new way?" He stopped walking, turning to face her. "I've heard you play, Delilah. You're extraordinary. If you want to perform again, I'll make it happen. I know people, have connections in the music world. We can start small, build your confidence back up, show the world what you're capable of." Hope fluttered in Delilah's chest, tentative and fragile. "You really think I could?" "I know you could. The only question is whether you want to." She thought about it, really thought about it for the first time since the accident. Did she want to perform again? Did she want to put herself out there, vulnerable and exposed, in front of audiences who might judge her disability more than her music? The old fear rose up, but alongside it was something new, the confidence that came from having Xerxes believe in her, from knowing she'd already faced impossible things and survived. "I think I might," she said slowly. "Maybe not big concert halls yet, but smaller venues. Intimate performances where I can connect with the audience, where the music is what matters most. Then we'll make it happen." He pulled her close, kissing the top of her head. Whatever you need, whatever you want to achieve, I'm here to support you. It was one of the many small ways he showed his love, Delilah was learning. Not through grand gestures or expensive gifts, though there were certainly those too, but through listening, through remembering what mattered to her, through using his considerable resources and power to help her achieve her dreams. He made her feel seen in ways no one ever had, valued for exactly who she was. Their physical relationship progressed slowly, carefully. Xerxes was acutely aware of the dangers his strength posed, the predatory instincts he had to constantly keep in check. He kissed her often, held her close, but always maintained careful control. Until the night Delilah decided she was done with careful. They were in the library, Xerxes reading aloud from a book while Delilah lay with her head in his lap. It was something they did most evenings, a quiet intimacy that had become precious to both of them. But tonight, Delilah couldn't focus on the words. She was too aware of the solid strength of his thighs beneath her head, the cool fingers that absently stroked her hair, the way his voice rumbled through his chest. "Xerxes," she interrupted. "Stop reading." He stopped immediately. "Is something wrong?" "No, She sat up, turning to face him. "I want more than just kissing and holding hands. I want you, all of you." She felt him go very still. "Delilah, we should wait. I could hurt you if I lost control." "You won't lose control. You never do." She reached out, finding his face, feeling the sharp line of his jaw. "I trust you, Xerxes, completely, and I need you to trust yourself, too." "You're asking me to risk the thing I value most," he said quietly. "Your safety, your life. What if my instincts take over? What if I hurt you? Then we'll deal with it together. But I don't think you will. You've spent centuries mastering control, and you love me. I know you do." She leaned forward, pressing her forehead to his. "Make love to me, Xerxes, please." The war within him was palpable, desire fighting with fear. Then he made a soft sound, almost a growl, and his hands came up to frame her face. "If at any point you feel uncomfortable or afraid, you tell me immediately. Promise me." "I promise." He kissed her then, deep and thorough, his control slipping just enough to show her the passion beneath. Then he lifted her effortlessly, carrying her through the mansion to his bedroom. The room was as luxurious as everything else in Thornmoor, but Delilah barely noticed. All her attention was focused on Xerxes, on the way his hands moved over her body with reverent care, on the way he whispered her name like a prayer. They made love slowly, carefully, Xerxes constantly checking in with her to make sure she was comfortable, and despite his fears, he never lost control. His strength remained leashed, his instincts kept firmly in check. Instead, he lavished her with attention, learning every way to make her gasp and sigh, bringing her to heights of pleasure she'd never experienced. Afterward, they lay tangled together in his enormous bed, Delilah's head resting on his chest, even though no heartbeat sounded beneath her ear. He traced patterns on her bare shoulder, his touch soothing. "Thank you," he said quietly. "For what?" "For trusting me. For not being afraid. For giving me this." He pressed a kiss to her hair. "I never thought I'd have this again. Intimacy, connection, love. I'd resigned myself to an eternity alone." "Well, you don't have to be alone anymore." Delilah tilted her face up toward his. "You're stuck with me now. I can think of no better fate." As autumn deepened into winter, Delilah's life at Thornmoor settled into a comfortable rhythm. She taught her students during the late afternoon and evening hours, timing her schedule to match Xerxes's waking hours. She practiced piano, worked on new pieces, and even began planning her return to performance. Xerxes had arranged for her to play at a small venue in downtown Chicago, an intimate club known for showcasing talented musicians. The performance was scheduled for February, giving her months to prepare. But even as their personal life flourished, the vampire world remained tense. Ravenna had gone quiet after the council vote, which worried Xerxes more than open hostility would have. "She's planning something," he said one evening, pacing the study while Lucian reported on the latest intelligence. "Ravenna doesn't give up that easily." "We have people watching her estate," Lucian assured him. "If she makes a move, we'll know." "That may not be enough." Xerxes ran a hand through his white hair, a rare sign of agitation. She knows she can't challenge me directly through the council again, which means she'll try something else, something outside the rules. Delilah listened from her seat by the fire, Murphy at her feet. What could she do? You won the vote. She has to accept the council's decision. She has to accept it publicly, Xerxes corrected, but there are ways around council law. Assassins, accidents, ways to remove a problem without leaving obvious evidence. He stopped pacing, his attention focusing on her. I think you should stay inside Thornmoor until we know what she's planning. No walks in the gardens after dark. No trips into the city without significant protection. You want me to hide? Delilah felt a spark of irritation. I can't live like a prisoner, Xerxes. Better a temporary prisoner than permanently dead. He's right, Lucian said reluctantly. Ravenna has resources and connections. If she's decided you're a liability that needs to be eliminated, she'll find a way to try. At least until we know her plans, you should stay somewhere we can protect you. Delilah wanted to argue, to insist on her independence, but she could hear the genuine fear in Xerxes' voice. Okay, but only until you figure out what she's up to. I'm not spending the rest of my life locked in this mansion, no matter how beautiful it is. Agreed. Xerxes moved to her side, taking her hand. I'm sorry to ask this of you. I know it feels like I'm limiting your freedom. You're keeping me alive. There's a difference. She squeezed his hand. Just promise me you'll tell me everything. No more surprises, no more finding out about danger after the fact. I'm in this with you, Xerxes. Treat me like a partner, not a liability to be protected. You're right. I'll do better. He lifted her hand to his lips, pressing a kiss to her knuckles. You're the strongest person I know, Delilah Kerrigan. I need to remember that. The restrictions didn't last long. 3 days later, Lucian burst into the study where Delilah was practicing piano, his voice urgent. We found out what Ravenna's been planning. Xerxes needs you in his study immediately. Delilah's heart raced as she followed Lucian through the mansion, Murphy trotting beside them. When they entered the study, the tension in the room was palpable. Xerxes stood by the window, his posture rigid. What's happened? Delilah asked. Ravenna isn't planning an attack, Xerxes said, his voice tight. She's planning something much worse. She's been gathering evidence, building a case to take to the Grand Council. The Grand Council? Delilah repeated, confused. The International Vampire Council, the one that governs all vampire territories worldwide, Lucian explained. They have the power to overrule regional decisions, to strip kings of their titles, to enforce laws across all vampire kind. Ravenna is arguing that your existence violates international vampire law, Xerxes continued. She's claiming that by allowing you to live with knowledge of our existence, I've broken the most fundamental law of our society. Absolute secrecy. She wants the Grand Council to intervene, to force me to either turn you into a vampire or kill you. The words hit Delilah like a physical blow. Can they do that? Yes, Xerxes said grimly. The Grand Council's authority supersedes mine. If they rule in Ravenna's favor, I'll have no choice but to comply or face execution myself. Then we turn her, Lucian said immediately. It's the only solution that keeps you both alive. No, Xerxes' voice was firm. I won't force that choice on her. It's not forcing if she agrees, Lucian argued. Delilah, you understand what's at stake. If you became one of us, Ravenna's entire argument falls apart. There would be no human with knowledge of our existence, no violation of the law. Delilah's mind raced. Xerxes, what would turning me into a vampire actually mean? Tell me everything, not just the dangers. He was quiet for a long moment. Then he said, you would gain immortality, strength, speed beyond human capability. Your senses would sharpen dramatically. You'd be able to see again, Delilah. Vampire sight is enhanced far beyond human visual acuity. You would see better than you did before the accident. She felt her breath catch. I'd have my sight back. Yes, but there's a cost. You'd need to drink blood to survive. You'd never be able to go out in sunlight again. You'd watch everyone you care about age and die while you remained unchanged. The transformation itself is excruciating, and there's a chance you wouldn't survive it. His voice softened. And you'd lose your humanity, that essential spark that makes you who you are. You'd become something else, something other. I won't ask you to give up your very self just to satisfy vampire politics. But if I don't, we both die, Delilah said quietly. That's what you're not saying. If the Grand Council rules against us, Ravenna will have won. Then we'll run, leave the country, disappear somewhere they can't find us, and spend eternity looking over our shoulders, always hiding, never safe? Delilah shook her head. That's not living, Xerxes. That's just existing. I won't ask you to change what you are for me, he said fiercely. I fell in love with the human woman who plays piano with such passion, who faces down vampires with courage, who makes me believe in the possibility of a better world. If I turn you, that woman will be gone. Or she'll evolve into something new. Delilah stood, moving toward him until she could touch his face. I'm not the same person I was before I lost my sight, Xerxes. I've already been transformed once, already lost something fundamental about who I was. I survived that. I adapted. I became someone different but not less. Why do you think becoming a vampire would be any different? Because I've seen it go wrong, he said roughly. I've seen people lose themselves in the transformation, become monsters who can't remember what it was like to be human. I can't risk that happening to you. Then help me make sure it doesn't. She gripped his face firmly, holding his attention. Xerxes, I love you. I love the life we're building together, and I'm not ready to die. Not when I've finally found something worth living for. If becoming a vampire means we get eternity together, if it means I can see your face for the first time, if it means we don't have to hide or run or constantly fear what Ravenna and others like her might do, then I'm willing to take that risk. Delilah, I'm not asking your permission. I'm telling you my decision. Her voice was firm, certain. I want to be turned, I want to become a vampire, and I want you to be the one to do it, because I trust you with my life, my death, and everything that comes after. Silence fell over the study. Lucian cleared his throat. For what it's worth, I think she's right. And if we're going to do this, we should do it soon, before Ravenna can convene the Grand Council. Xerxes pulled Delilah into his arms, holding her tight. She felt him trembling, felt the weight of his fear and his hope warring within him. If we do this, he said finally, we do it right. I'll call in every favor I'm owed, bring in the best of our kind to help guide you through the transformation. I'll make sure you have every possible advantage, every chance of surviving with your sense of self intact. When? Delilah asked. 3 days. That gives me time to prepare, to gather the people we need, to make sure everything is perfect. He pulled back slightly, his cool hands framing her face. Are you absolutely certain? Once we start, there's no going back. I'm certain. She had never been more certain of anything in her life. Let's do this. The next 3 days were a whirlwind of preparation. Xerxes brought in vampire experts from across the continent, ancient beings who had overseen countless transformations. They examined Delilah, asked her hundreds of questions, assessed her physical and mental readiness. She was put on a special diet meant to strengthen her body for the ordeal ahead. She was taught meditation techniques to help manage the pain. She was told repeatedly about the risks and dangers and all the ways this could go catastrophically wrong. Through it all, Xerxes never left her side. He held her hand during the examinations, answered her questions with painful honesty, and made her feel as safe as anyone could while facing their own death and potential rebirth. The night of the transformation arrived cold and clear. They gathered in a specially prepared chamber deep beneath Thornmoor, a room lined with stone and carved with ancient symbols. Delilah could feel the age of the space, the weight of thousands of years pressing down. Last chance to back out, Xerxes said quietly, holding both her hands. Not a chance. Delilah tried to smile, though her heart was racing with fear. Although, I wouldn't mind if you told me what you look like. You've described everything else to me, but never yourself. I'll do better than tell you. Soon you'll be able to see for yourself. His thumbs brushed her knuckles. Are you ready? Yes. He lifted her gently, carrying her to a raised platform in the center of the room. She lay back on what felt like soft cushions, and Xerxes settled beside her. She could hear others in the room, the vampires who would monitor the transformation, but they felt distant, unimportant. There was only Xerxes, only this moment. I love you, he said, his voice breaking slightly. No matter what happens, no matter how this changes you, I will always love you. I love you too. She reached up, finding his face one last time with her human hands. See you on the other side. He bent down, pressing a kiss to her lips, soft and sweet. Then he moved to her throat, and she felt the sharp points of his fangs against her skin. This will hurt, he warned. I know. The bite was agony and ecstasy combined, pain so sharp it stole her breath, but also an intimacy beyond anything she'd experienced. She felt her life draining away, felt herself getting weaker, colder. The world started to fade, darkness beyond darkness pulling her down. Just as she thought she couldn't take any more, something changed. Xerxes's wrist was pressed to her lips, and she tasted blood, rich and strange and powerful. Instinct made her drink, made her swallow, even as part of her recoiled. The blood burned going down, fire in her veins, and the pain that had been sharp before became excruciating. She was dying. She was being torn apart and rebuilt. She was burning, drowning, suffocating all at once. Time lost meaning. There was only pain, and Xerxes' voice, constant and steady, telling her she was strong. She could survive this. She would make it through. Then, slowly, the pain began to recede. Her body felt different, wrong, like it didn't quite fit anymore. But she was aware, conscious, still herself, even if that self had been fundamentally altered. Delilah? Xerxes' voice anxious and hopeful. Can you hear me? She tried to speak, but her throat felt strange. She managed to nod. Open your eyes, slowly. Eyes. She'd forgotten she could do that, 3 years of blindness erasing the instinct. She focused, trying to remember how, and slowly, impossibly, her eyelids lifted. At first, she saw nothing. Then shapes began to form, blurry and indistinct. Color bleeding into the darkness, light and shadow separating into distinct forms. And then, with sudden crystalline clarity, she could see. The chamber was exactly as Xerxes had described it. Stone walls carved with ancient symbols, flickering torches providing warm light. And there, leaning over her with an expression of desperate hope, was the most beautiful man she had ever seen. White hair, long and straight, framed a face that looked carved from marble. Sharp cheekbones, a straight nose, lips that she knew from touch were soft despite their severe line. But it was his eyes that caught her, held her, made her breath stop. They were silver, literally silver, like moonlight made solid, and they looked at her with such love, such relief, such joy, that she felt tears prick her new eyes. You're beautiful, she whispered, her voice strange and new. Xerxes laughed, the sound broken with emotion. You can see me? I can see you. I can see everything. She sat up slowly, marveling at the strength in her body, the way her senses had exploded into awareness. She could hear conversations happening floors above them, could smell blood and stone and age, could see individual dust motes floating in the torchlight. This is incredible. You survived. He pulled her into his arms, holding her so tight it would have hurt her human body. I was so afraid I'd lost you. You'll never lose me. She pulled back to look at him again, drinking in every detail of his face. We have eternity now, remember? The other vampires in the chamber approached, examining her with professional interest. One of them, an ancient woman with kind eyes, smiled. The transformation was successful. She's retained her sense of self, her memories, her personality. This is a very good outcome, King Xerxes. Thank you, Elena. Xerxes' attention never left Delilah. How do you feel? Really? Delilah took inventory of her new body, her new senses. She felt strong, powerful in ways she'd never imagined. The constant vulnerability of blindness was gone, replaced by sight so sharp she could see cracks in the stone walls. But she also felt different, colder somehow, less connected to the warm, fragile thing she'd been as a human. I feel like me, she said finally, but also not. Like I'm the same person, just more. Does that make sense? Perfect sense. He helped her stand, steadying her when she swayed slightly. It will take time to adjust, to learn how to use your new abilities, but we have nothing but time now. And Ravenna? Delilah asked. Does this solve the problem? It eliminates her argument to the Grand Council. There's no longer a human with knowledge of our existence." Lucian stepped forward, grinning. "Welcome to immortality, Delilah. You're one of us now." The implications of that hit her all at once. She was a vampire. She would need to drink blood. She would never see sunlight again. She had given up her humanity, her mortality, everything that made her fundamentally human. It should have terrified her. Instead, she felt only excitement and curiosity about this new existence. "Can we go home?" she asked Xerxes. "I want to see Thornmoor with my new eyes. I want to see everything." The smile he gave her was pure joy. "Anything you want." The weeks that followed were an adjustment period, unlike anything Delilah had ever experienced. Learning to be a vampire was like learning to walk again. Except now she could run faster than cars and leap to the second floor of Thornmoor without effort. She learned to control her strength so she didn't accidentally crush things. She learned to manage her enhanced senses, to filter out the overwhelming input so she wasn't constantly distracted. And she learned to feed, an experience that was initially disturbing but eventually became as natural as eating had been. Xerxes was patient through it all, teaching her the customs and laws of vampire society, introducing her to other vampires, showing her the hidden world she now belonged to. And true to her suspicion, she didn't lose herself in the transformation. She was still Delilah, still loved music and Murphy and terrible jokes. She was just Delilah with fangs and immortality and the ability to see her lover's face. The news of her transformation spread quickly through vampire society. Reactions were mixed. Some vampires saw it as a scandal, a human elevated to their ranks through politics rather than merit. Others saw it as a romantic gesture, the king so devoted to his love that he gave her eternity. And a few, like Lucian and Elena, simply welcomed her as one of them. Ravenna, predictably, was furious. But with Delilah now a vampire, she had no grounds to continue her challenge. The Grand Council never convened, the threat dissolving before it could fully manifest. Ravenna retreated to her estate, nursing her grudge and plotting, no doubt, but unable to act without violating council law. "She'll try again eventually," Xerxes warned one evening as they walked through Thornmoor's gardens. Delilah was marveling at the sight of flowers, at the way moonlight painted everything in shades of silver and shadow. "Ravenna doesn't give up." "Then we'll face her together," Delilah said confidently. "I'm not the vulnerable human anymore, Xerxes. I'm your equal now, your partner in truth." "You were always my equal." He pulled her close, pressing a kiss to her temple. "Mortality doesn't determine worth." "No, but it does determine vulnerability, and I'm not vulnerable anymore." They stood there in the gardens holding each other, and Delilah thought about how much her life had changed in just a few months. She'd gone from lonely and isolated to loved and powerful. She'd lost her humanity but gained eternity. She'd faced ancient vampires and survived her own transformation, and through it all, she'd found love with a man who saw her, truly saw her, in ways no one ever had. "Do you regret it?" Xerxes asked quietly. "Becoming what you are?" Delilah thought about it carefully. Did she miss the sun? Yes. Did she mourn the loss of her human life, the foods she could no longer eat, the simple pleasures of mortality? Sometimes. But when she weighed those losses against what she'd gained, sight, strength, immortality with the person she loved, the answer was clear. "No," she said firmly. "I don't regret it. This is where I'm meant to be, who I'm meant to be." "Good." He turned her in his arms, his silver eyes meeting hers in the moonlight. "Because I'm planning to spend the next few millennia making sure you're happy." "Only a few millennia?" she grinned, feeling her fangs press against her lip. "I was hoping for at least 10. "Greedy," he murmured, but he was smiling as he kissed her. True to his promise, Xerxes helped Delilah plan her return to performing. The concert was scheduled for a small venue in downtown Chicago, an intimate space that held maybe 200 people. Delilah was nervous in ways she hadn't been since before the accident, but it was a good nervousness, an excited anticipation of sharing her music again. The night of the performance arrived crisp and clear. Delilah dressed carefully in a gown Xerxes had chosen, deep blue silk that made her feel beautiful and confident. She could see herself in the mirror now, see the woman she'd become. Pale, yes, with the distinctive vampire pallor, but striking in a way she'd never been as a human. Her eyes had taken on hints of silver, marking her as Xerxes' creation, his progeny in vampire terms. "You're going to be magnificent," Xerxes said, adjusting her necklace with careful fingers. "They won't know what hit them. What if I mess up? What if my new vampire reflexes make me play too fast or too hard? Then you'll adjust mid-performance, because you're brilliant and talented and have centuries to perfect your technique." He kissed her softly. "Trust yourself, Delilah. I do." The venue was packed when they arrived, every seat filled with people eager to hear the mysterious pianist who'd been in seclusion for years. Delilah could hear their heartbeats, smell their blood, but the hunger was manageable. She'd fed earlier, and her control had improved dramatically. She took her place at the piano on the small stage, her hands finding the keys with familiar ease. The crowd hushed, waiting, and Delilah began to play. The music flowed from her fingers like water, like light, like every beautiful thing she'd ever experienced distilled into sound. She played Chopin and Rachmaninoff, Debussy and Beethoven, pieces she'd loved as a human and pieces she was discovering with her new senses. She poured 3 years of darkness and transformation into the music. Let it tell the story of loss and adaptation and ultimately love that had given her a reason to perform again. When the last note faded, the silence lasted just a moment. Then the audience erupted in applause, standing and cheering with genuine enthusiasm. Delilah could see them now, see their faces lit with joy and appreciation, and she felt something settle in her chest. This was right. This was who she was meant to be. A pianist, a vampire, a woman who'd faced impossible choices and come through stronger. Xerxes was waiting backstage when she finished, his pride evident in every line of his face. "You were perfect. Absolutely perfect." "I felt perfect," she admitted, like everything finally came together the way it was supposed to. Because it did. He pulled her close, heedless of the people passing by. "I'm so proud of you, Delilah, for taking back your dream, for not letting fear or change stop you." "I learned from the best," she kissed him softly. "A very old, very stubborn vampire king who taught me that transformation doesn't have to mean loss. Sometimes it means finding exactly what you were looking for all along." The performance was written up in several music blogs and local papers, praised for its emotional depth and technical excellence. Delilah was offered more bookings, bigger venues, opportunities she'd never dreamed possible. But she took them slowly, carefully, balancing her music career with her new life as a vampire and her role as Xerxes' partner. 6 months after her transformation, the council called another meeting. But this time, the purpose was different. Xerxes stood before the assembled vampires, Delilah at his side, and announced new laws. Protections for humans who were turned by vampires, rights for vampire progeny, reforms that would make vampire society more equitable and less hierarchical. Braille. "We have lived in the shadows for too long," Xerxes said, his voice carrying through the grand chamber. "Hidden out of fear, ruling through secrecy and intimidation. But the world is changing, and we must change with it. These reforms are the beginning of a new era, one where vampires and humans can coexist peacefully, where our kind doesn't have to live in constant fear of discovery." Ravenna stood, her face twisted with fury. "You're destroying everything we are, making us weak, vulnerable." "I'm making us adaptable," Xerxes cut her off coldly. "And if you cannot see the value in that, perhaps you should step down from the council and let those with vision lead." The challenge was clear, and for a moment, Delilah thought Ravenna might actually attack. But then the other council members began voicing their support one by one. Even some of the traditionalists admitted that Xerxes' reforms made sense, that the old ways were becoming too dangerous in the modern world. When the vote came, it was overwhelming. 11 in favor, only Ravenna and 1 other against. The reforms passed, and with them, a fundamental shift in vampire society. "You did it," Delilah said afterward, alone with Xerxes in his study. "You actually changed things." "We did it," he corrected. "You were the catalyst, Delilah. Your courage, your transformation, your very existence challenged everything vampires believed about humans and themselves. I just provided the platform." "Always so modest," she teased. The vampire king who reshaped an entire society, no big deal. He laughed, pulling her onto his lap. With you by my side, anything feels possible. That's your gift, Delilah. You make me believe in impossible things. They sat together in comfortable silence, and Delilah thought about the journey that had brought them here. A chance encounter in a dark alley, a blind woman who couldn't see the fangs of the predator who'd approached her, a vampire king who'd found something worth fighting for in the courage and trust of one human woman. It shouldn't have worked. By all logic, all reason, they should have been nothing more than a tragic story of crossed boundaries and doomed love. But they'd defied logic. They'd fought for each other, changed for each other, built something beautiful and lasting from the most unlikely foundation. And now they had eternity to continue that work, to keep pushing vampire society toward a better future, to make music and love and history together. "What are you thinking?" Xerxes asked, his cool fingers tracing patterns on her arm. "That I'm happy," Delilah said simply. "Truly, completely happy. I never thought I'd be able to say that again after the accident, but here I am. A blind woman who can see, a human who became a vampire, a pianist who found her music again, and most importantly, a woman who found love with someone who makes eternity feel like a gift instead of a burden." "I love you, Delilah Kerrigan," he said softly. "For 3,000 years, I waited without knowing what I was waiting for. And then I heard you play, and I knew. You were what had been missing, what I'd been searching for through all those lonely centuries. My partner, my equal, my heart made solid. I love you too, Xerxes Blackthorn, my vampire king, my love, my home." She kissed him deeply, pouring all her emotion into the gesture. "Thank you for finding me. Thank you for being patient with me. Thank you for giving me forever. Thank you for trusting me," he replied. "For not running when you had every reason to. For seeing past the monster to the man beneath. For choosing to stay, to transform, to build this life with me." Outside the study windows, the night stretched endless and full of possibility. Chicago glowed with lights, the modern city hiding its ancient vampire population in plain sight. Somewhere out there, Ravenna was likely plotting her next move. Other vampires were debating the new reforms, and the world kept turning, oblivious to the supernatural society that lived alongside humanity. But in this moment, in this room, there were just two people who'd found each other against all odds. A vampire king and his progeny, his love, his queen in all but title. Together, they would face whatever challenges came next. Together, they would continue to push for change and progress. Together, they would make beautiful music and passionate love and meaningful history. And together, they would have forever to keep discovering new depths to their connection, new reasons to be grateful for the chance encounter in a dark alley that had changed both their lives irrevocably. Delilah closed her eyes, no longer blind, but choosing darkness for a moment, and let herself simply feel. The cool strength of Xerxes' arms around her, the solid weight of his presence, no longer foreign or frightening, but familiar and beloved. The rightness of being here, in this place, with this person, living this impossible life. She'd lost her sight once and learned to navigate a world of darkness. She'd lost her humanity and gained immortality. She'd lost her fear and found courage. And through it all, she'd gained far more than she'd sacrificed. Love, purpose, a future that stretched endlessly ahead, full of music and joy and the kind of deep partnership most people never found in their limited mortal years. "Ready for forever?" Xerxes asked, as if reading her thoughts. Delilah opened her eyes, meeting his silver gaze with her own. "With you?" "Absolutely." And as they sat together in the study of Thornmoor, the vampire king and his beloved progeny, the future unfolded before them bright with promise. There would be challenges, certainly. Enemies to face, politics to navigate, changes to implement in a society resistant to progress. But they would face it all together, united by a love that had transformed them both, that had proven stronger than ancient prejudices and mortal limitations. The blind woman had trusted the vampire king with her whole heart, and in return, he had given her eternity. It was a love story that would be whispered about in vampire courts for centuries to come, a testament to the power of trust, courage, and the unexpected connections that could change the world. And somewhere in the music room of Thornmoor, a piano waited to sing again, to tell their story in notes and harmonies, to prove that even in darkness, even in the most impossible circumstances, love and music could create something beautiful, something lasting, something worth living forever to protect.